My name is Wren Doyle, and I was 38 the year I finally understood what my guest room was worth to my husband's family. For 12 summers, the Merricks packed the same 4 SUVs and drove north to a cedar lodge on Lake Corbin, and every single year there was room for the family dog, room for Trevor's girlfriend of the season, even room for my own 2 kids some summers, but never room for me. This spring, that lodge burned to its foundation at 2 in the morning. 3 days later, my mother-in-law called me directly, not my husband, and asked, very sweetly, if she could move into my guest room for 6 weeks. What she needed wasn't my hospitality. It was my signature, and it took me exactly 11 days to understand why. Welcome to Dark Revenge, where we tell the true feeling stories of people who got even without ever raising their voice, the quiet ones in loud families, the ones who kept the receipts everyone else threw away. If a family has ever made you feel like the extra chair nobody set out, drop the word lodge in the comments so I know you're staying for this one, and subscribe, because the way this ends is not what my mother-in-law expected. I should tell you what my life actually looked like before that phone call, because none of it was dramatic, and that's sort of the point. I live in Marbury, a town of about 14,000 people, 40 minutes from the lake everyone in my husband's family loves so much. I'm a senior property claims examiner at Granite Fidelity Insurance, which is a fancy way of saying I spend my days reading damage reports, comparing them to policy language, and deciding whether the story someone tells about their roof actually matches the weather report from that night. 11 years in that chair teach you something most people never have to learn. A story and a timeline are 2 different things, and when they don't match, the timeline always wins. My husband, Caleb, is a physical therapist at the sports medicine clinic on Route 9. He's the kind of man who apologizes to furniture when he bumps into it, kind, easy to love, and for exactly as long as I've known him, allergic to conflict with his mother. We have 2 kids. Milo is 10 and plays trumpet badly and with total confidence. Josie is 7 and draws the same horse in every picture, just in different colors. We live on Larkspur Court, in a house with a guest room over the garage that used to be my home office, before my mother-in-law started needing it more than I needed a desk. I'm not a dramatic person. I don't raise my voice in meetings. I keep a color-coded folder for every open claim I've ever handled, and at home I keep the same habit without meaning to. Insurance cards in one drawer, warranties in another, birthday cards from school parties in a shoebox on the closet shelf. My mother used to say I organize my feelings the same way I organize paperwork, quietly, and where I can find them again later. None of that made me interesting to the Merricks. It just made me useful, eventually. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's what you need to understand about the Merricks before the fire, because the fire only makes sense once you understand the 12 summers that came before it. Caleb's father, Walt, bought the lodge on Lake Corbin back in the 70s, when the land on that side of the water was cheap and the marina next to it was just a dock and a bait shop. By the time I married into the family, the lodge was a 5-bedroom cedar building with a stone fireplace big enough to stand in, and every July the whole family spent a week there. It was, in Georgette's own words, the 1 week a year that keeps this family a family. I was not part of that week. Not once in 12 years. The first summer, 4 months after our wedding, Georgette told me gently that the lodge really only sleeps 8 comfortably, and that maybe next year, once everyone adjusted, there'd be room. Caleb went for the long weekend. He came back sunburned on one shoulder and wouldn't quite meet my eyes when I asked how it was. The 3rd summer, I was 7 months pregnant with Milo. I remember thinking, foolishly, that a grandchild on the way might finally open a door. It didn't. Georgette said the same thing about the room count, and added that pregnant women shouldn't be up and down those lodge stairs anyway. I stayed home in Marbury and painted a nursery a color called Quiet Sage while my husband's family took a week off, 40 minutes away without me. By the 5th summer, Milo was old enough to be invited on his own. Cousin's Week, Georgette called it, and she meant it literally. My son went to the lake, and I did not. He came back with a farmer's tan and a framed photograph that ended up hanging in the Merrick hallway in Alder Falls. 4 generations on the lodge dock, my son grinning gap-toothed in the front row. I'm not in that photograph. I was never at the lodge to be in it. The 8th summer, I stopped waiting for an invitation and rented us a cabin of our own, 10 minutes down the same lake road, so at least the kids could see their cousins during the day. Della, my niece, posted a picture from the dock that week captioned, 10 minutes from the fam. Georgette texted Caleb that same afternoon. You didn't need to rent something. You know the lodge has room. She never once said that to me, directly. She said it to my husband, about my choice, in a house I still wasn't allowed to stay in. The 10th summer, Caleb finally asked her outright at her kitchen table why I'd never once been invited in 10 years of marriage. I wasn't there for it, but he told me that night, staring at the ceiling instead of at me. Georgette had folded her hands and said, It's complicated, honey. You understand, don't you? And Caleb, kind, conflict-averse Caleb, said that he did, and let it go, the way he let go of everything where his mother was concerned. I didn't bring it up again after that. Not because it stopped hurting, because I'd finally understood that raising it only cost me more than staying quiet did. 12 years of empty chairs at that dock table. 12 years of maybe next year. I want you to hold on to that number because it matters later, in a way I couldn't have guessed yet. The call about the fire came on a Tuesday, the first week of May, during an unseasonably cold snap that had everyone in Marbury still running their furnaces at night. Caleb's phone buzzed at 6:40 in the morning. I watched the color drain out of his face while he listened, and I already knew, before he said a word, that whatever had happened involved his mother. The lodge burned down, he said, lowering the phone slowly, like it had gotten heavier. Last night. It's gone. Boathouse too. Nobody was hurt, which was the first thing he said, and the thing I was most grateful for. Georgette had been staying with her friend Carol in Alder Falls, 2 nights running, for a hip specialist appointment. Trevor had been at his apartment above the marina office on the other side of the cove, close enough to see the smoke from his window, too far to do anything about it. The fire marshal was already on scene. Early word, filtered through Georgette to Caleb, was a possible electrical fault in the old boathouse wiring, the kind of thing insurance adjusters see all the time on lake properties built before anyone worried about surge protection. I made coffee. I always make coffee when I don't know what else to do with my hands. I asked Caleb if there was anything we could do, and he said his mother would probably call once she talked to the insurance company. She called 3 days later. Not Caleb. Me. Wren, honey, she said, in the voice she used for church committees and camera crews. I hate to ask, but every hotel within 20 miles is booked solid with fire crews and adjusters, and Trevor really needs to stay close to the marina without being underfoot at the investigation site. Would you have room for the 3 of us? Just the guest room. 6 weeks, maybe less, while the claim sorts itself out. 3 of us meant her, Trevor and Della. I said yes before I'd fully thought it through, the way you say yes to family emergencies, because that's what you do. But I noticed something in that sentence I couldn't put down afterward, without being underfoot at the investigation site. Not the cleanup site, not the rebuild site, the investigation site. I didn't know yet how much that one word would end up mattering. I just knew it sat wrong, the way a number sits wrong on a claims form before you can say exactly why. They moved in 2 days later, on a Thursday, with 4 duffel bags and a garment rack between the 3 of them, which for a family that had supposedly fled a burning building with nothing, struck me as oddly little and oddly new. Georgette had always talked about Walt's grandfather's fishing rods hanging over the lodge fireplace like they were relics from a saint. She'd mentioned her mother's quilt, hand-stitched in 1961, more times at holiday dinners than she'd ever mentioned me. I expected grief. I expected someone, at some point that first week, to mention what they'd lost. Nobody did. Nobody cried over a photograph that wasn't there anymore. It was the kind of silence that only makes sense if you already know something isn't lost. It's just somewhere else. I noticed the clothes had tags on them still, 3 separate bags bought new from a chain store off Route 12, not salvaged from anywhere. I noticed Della, 16 and quieter than the rest of them, watching her grandmother and father with an expression I recognized from my own childhood, the look of someone doing math they didn't want to be doing. On the second Sunday, I did their laundry, because that's what you do when your house suddenly holds 5 more loads of towels a week. In the pocket of Georgette's gray cardigan, I found a receipt. Fenwick Self-Storage, a unit rental dated 3 weeks before the fire. Not after. Before. I didn't say anything. I put the receipt back exactly where I'd found it, folded the cardigan, and set it on the guest bed. That same week, I heard Trevor on the back porch on the phone, low and tight. The appraisal has to hold at replacement, not actual cash value, or none of the numbers work, he said. And then quieter. I know, just don't let them lowball the boathouse contents. People who've just lost everything talk about what they miss. They don't talk about appraisals, holding at replacement value. I've read enough claims files to know grief has a vocabulary, and Trevor wasn't speaking it. I told myself I was imagining things. I've built a career on not imagining things, on making people prove the story before I believe it. So instead of accusing anyone of anything, I did the only thing that's ever made sense to me when something doesn't add up. I started keeping notes. I want to be clear about something, because it matters for what comes later. I never once used my job to look into my own family's claim. Granite Fidelity doesn't hold the policy on the lodge, Lakeshore Mutual does, and even if they had, pulling a file I had a personal stake in would have ended my career the same week it started. Everything I did from that point on, I could have done as any private citizen with a library card and a notebook. I kept a small notebook in the kitchen drawer, the same drawer where I keep spare keys and dead batteries, and I wrote down dates. The day they moved in, the day I found the storage receipt, the date on the receipt itself, what they brought with them and what they hadn't. It wasn't an investigation. It was just a woman who reads timelines for a living, unable to stop reading one. I drove to the Alder Falls town clerk's office on my lunch hour and requested a copy of the fire marshal's preliminary report, which becomes public record once the initial phase closes. It took 4 days and a small copying fee. The report listed the point of origin as the boathouse fuel storage area and flagged burn patterns consistent with an accelerant, though it stopped short of calling it arson outright. Under contributing factors, it listed one line that made my stomach drop. Property listed for sale, listing withdrawn approximately 2 weeks prior to incident. I called an old coworker, Priya, who'd moved over to Lakeshore Mutual's Special Investigations unit a few years back. I didn't tell her whose claim it was. I asked her, in the vague, hypothetical language 2 claims people use with each other over coffee, what it means when a host family member is asked to backdate a displacement letter for an additional living expenses claim. It means, Priya said, stirring her coffee, not even looking up, that someone's trying to make the claim start before the loss did. Don't sign anything with a date you can't personally vouch for, Wren. Ever. I hadn't told her I'd been asked to sign anything yet. I hadn't been. Not yet. Real quick, before I tell you what happened at my own kitchen table 3 nights later, if you've ever had to quietly decide whether helping family meant lying for them, even a little, you already know the exact size of the knot I had in my stomach walking into that conversation. Hit subscribe if you want to see whether I signed it, and tell me honestly in the comments. Would you have? Georgette asked me on a Tuesday evening, at my own kitchen table, over the pot roast I'd made because I still, somehow, wanted to be a good daughter-in-law. She slid a single-typed page across the table. A host attestation letter, the kind Lakeshore Mutual requires to verify additional living expenses, who took the displaced family in, when, what was provided. Standard paperwork. I'd seen 100 versions of it at Granite Fidelity, except the date at the top read April 30th. The fire happened May 4th. It's just a formality, Georgette said, not quite meeting my eyes, reaching for her wine. The insurance company just needs a clean start date for the claim period. Don't overthink it, dear. You're so good at overthinking things. Georgette, you moved in on the 6th. I have the date written down. I can't sign something that says the 30th. Something in her face shifted, fast, like weather changing over the lake. The warmth she'd worn like a scarf for 11 days came off in one motion. After everything I've done for this family, she said, you can't do this one small thing. It's not small. It's a date on an insurance document. If it's wrong, that's fraud, Georgette. Even a few days. She stood up. You've always looked for a reason to not really be part of this family, Wren. I don't know why I expected this time to be different. I sat there with a forkful of pot roast going cold, and I let that land the way it was meant to, as if the 12 years of empty chairs at her dock table had been my doing and not hers. It's a remarkable thing, watching someone rewrite 12 years of history in real time because they need you to feel guilty faster than you can feel confused. I didn't sign the letter. I didn't hand it back either. I just left it on the table and went to check on the kids' homework because some conversations end better when you stop having them. Della found me on the back porch 2 nights later. 16 years old, arms wrapped around her knees, that same careful expression she'd had since the day she moved in. Aunt Wren, she said. Can I tell you something without it going anywhere? I told her she could. The boat. Grandpa Walt sold would one, the one Dad always says is worth more than his truck. She picked at a thread on her sleeve. It wasn't in the boathouse. Dad moved it to Uncle Frank's dock back in April. I heard him on the phone say, just in case. I don't know what in case means, but I know it wasn't in that fire, and I heard him tell the adjuster it was. I thanked her, quietly, and told her she'd done the right thing, and I meant it, though I didn't tell her yet what I thought it meant. The second reveal came from Caleb, of all people, 3 days later, and he had no idea what he was handing me. He was transferring old phone photos to our shared family cloud backup, clearing space before a software update, and a group chat archive synced that neither of us had opened in over a year, the extended Merrick family thread, dormant since a cousin's baby shower. I wasn't looking for anything. I was making dinner while he scrolled, half paying attention, and he laughed at an old photo of Josie in a dinosaur costume, then went quiet. That's weird, he said. Mom sent this in March. He turned the phone toward me. Georgette, to Trevor, from 2 months before the fire. If the refinance doesn't come through, we let the policy handle it. Either way, the lodge is not going to be my problem past summer. Caleb read it twice. I watched him do the same math Della had been doing on the porch for 11 days. She's talking about burning it down, he said slowly, like the words tasted wrong in his mouth. She's talking about letting something happen and not stopping it, I said. I don't know yet if that's the same thing. But I know it's not the same thing as an accident. I drove out to Lake Corbin that weekend, not to investigate anything. I want to be honest about that, but because I needed to see the ash for myself before I decided what to do with what I now knew. Ruth Pemberton has lived 3 docks down from the Merrick property for 40 years. She used to babysit Caleb when he was young enough to still call the lodge the big house. She found me standing at the edge of the scorched foundation, and she didn't ask why I was so quiet, because I wasn't crying. Not really, just standing very still the way I do when I need my face to hold steady. You're Kayla's wife, she said. Wren, isn't it? Never did understand why Georgette kept you so far from this place. I told her, carefully, that I'd wondered the same thing for 12 years. Ruth was quiet a moment, looking out at the water. Walt used to say it, at parties, half joking. Don't let anyone too careful near the books. Georgette took that more seriously than he meant it, I think. She always said you were the type who'd notice things. Ruth shrugged, like she was handing me something she didn't know was heavy. I always figured that's why you never got invited. Not because you weren't enough, because you might have been too much. I stood there a long time after she walked back to her own dock. 12 years of birthday cards, signed only from the Merricks. 12 years of my own children coming home with photographs I wasn't in. And the answer had never been that I didn't belong at that table. The answer was that some part of this family had always known, quietly, that a table with me at it eventually gets asked hard questions. They hadn't been protecting a lodge from an outsider. They'd been protecting whatever they were already planning from someone who reads fine print for a living. It didn't make the 12 years hurt less. It made them make sense, which is a different kind of ache entirely, the kind where you finally understand the shape of the wound, even as it's still bleeding. I didn't confront anyone at a dinner table. I didn't call a family meeting. I've built a career on the fact that confrontation rarely changes a story. An accurate timeline does. I wrote Georgette a short email, dated, factual, sent to no one but her. I can't sign an attestation with a start date I can't personally verify. You, Trevor, and Della arrived at my home on May 6th. I'm happy to confirm that date, in writing, to anyone who asks. I didn't send it to make a point. I send it because a claims examiner learns early that the safest thing you can ever put your name to is the truth, dated correctly. 9 days later, a woman named Carolyn Ash called my cell phone. Lakeshore Mutual, Special Investigations Unit, standard third-party host verification for an active ELE claim. Routine, she said. It happens on every claim over a certain size. She asked me exactly 3 questions. What date did the family arrive at my residence? What condition were their belongings in when they arrived? Whether I'd noticed anything moved, stored, or relocated from the lodge property before the fire. I answered every question honestly, and I didn't volunteer a single thing beyond what she asked. May 6th. New clothing, mostly, with store tags still attached. And yes, I told her about the storage unit receipt because she'd asked directly whether I'd seen anything relocated and I didn't hand over my notebook. I didn't mention Della, or the group chat message, or Ruth Pemberton, because none of that was mine to volunteer, and Carolyn hadn't asked. I answered exactly what was asked of me, truthfully, and let the actual dates do whatever the actual dates were going to do. They did quite a lot, it turned out. The fire marshal's report was already sitting in the same file, with its own line about a withdrawn listing 2 weeks before the fire. Between my confirmed arrival date and the storage unit paperwork investigators found on their own once they started looking, because insurance investigators are considerably better at looking than I am, the claim stopped moving forward the way Georgette had planned. The yearly payments that had been funding their 6-week stay in my guest room simply stopped. Georgette moved out 11 days after that phone call, once the checks dried up and she realized I wasn't going to be talked into signing anything else. She packed in about 40 minutes, quietly, no scene, which was somehow worse than if she'd yelled. On her way out the door, she looked at me and said, "I hope being right feels as good as being loved." I've turned that sentence over more times than I'd like to admit, mostly because I think she meant it as a wound, and mostly because it didn't land as one. Being right and being loved had never actually been on the same shelf in that house. I just hadn't noticed until then. The claim went into formal investigation and stayed there for the better part of a year. I don't know everything that happened inside that process. I was a witness, not a party to it. But I know Trevor's refinance never came through, and without the insurance payout to lean on, the marina's loan went into default that fall. Merrick Marina and Grill closed for good the following spring. Last I heard, the fire marshal's office had referred the file to the county fraud unit, and it's still sitting somewhere on a desk, moving at the speed these things move, slower than any of us would like, faster than the Merricks expected. Caleb didn't speak to his mother for almost 4 months. When he finally did, it wasn't to fix things. It was to tell her, calmly, that he wasn't loaning Trevor anything and that he needed some distance from her for a while. It was the first time in 12 years I'd heard him choose a boundary out loud instead of apologizing his way past one. I didn't gloat. I just made him coffee and let him sit with it. Della stayed close to us. She spends most weekends at our place now, and last month she asked if she could come to our lake trip, even though I'm not really your family, technically. I told her 12 years taught me that technically was never the part that mattered. We went to a different lake last July, Lake Ashby, a rented cabin with a dock half the size of the Merrick Lodge and exactly enough bedrooms for everyone I actually wanted there. Caleb, Milo, Josie, Della, and Ruth Pemberton, who I invited on something like a whim, and who cried a little when she said yes. There was a long table on that dock, the way there always had been at Lake Corbin, except this time nobody counted the chairs before they set them out. Milo played trumpet badly off the end of the dock, and nobody asked him to stop. Josie drew the same horse in a new color. Della laughed at something Caleb said, and it was the first time I'd heard her laugh without checking over her shoulder first. I think about the 12 empty chairs a lot less than I used to. Not because the ache is gone. Some things you just get better at carrying, but because I finally understand what they were protecting me from being close to, and I'm not sorry I never got invited into that particular story. I'm sorry it took a fire to show me the shape of the door I'd been standing outside of for 12 years. Family was never supposed to be the people who share your last name. It's the people who leave a chair out for you before they know if they'll ever need something from you later. That's my story. 1 guest room, 1 wrong date on a piece of paper, and 12 years of empty chairs that finally made sense. If you're new here, welcome to Dark Revenge. Every week, we tell true-feeling stories about people who got their power back quietly, in-law conflicts, inheritance disputes, family businesses, and the small, calm moment truth finally outweighs image. We don't do yelling matches or courtroom drama. We do the version where someone just refuses to sign the wrong date and lets everything else fall where it actually belongs. So here's my question for you, and I want an honest answer in the comments. If the family that skipped you for 12 summers suddenly needed your guest room, would you have signed their letter? Where's your line between being kind and being used? If this one hit close to home, like this video, subscribe so you don't miss next week's story, and share it with the one person in your life who'd understand exactly why I kept that notebook. I'll see you in the next one.